Okay, so in this video I'm going to talk about the meeting that Hara and myself had with rape crisis worker Tess Hudson. Tess Hudson is a development worker at Rape Crisis Tyneside in Northumberland. We met with her really just to sort of get more information sort of about the work that Rape Crisis does, how they work with victims, as well as to talk about our production and to see if Tess thought that the production was a good idea, if she felt that there was a certain sort of, if there was any certain types of themes she wanted us to explore, any ideas she wanted us to explore. So I'm just going to talk briefly about our meeting today. So I'll just start off by saying we met with Tess, and the first thing that we really wanted to talk about, or the first thing that Tess really wanted to talk about, was the idea of respect, and how, especially in the current climate where, in the current sort of world climate where these kind of big names, these big celebrities are now being sort of accused of sort of sexual crimes and some being actually convicted. She said that the awareness of sexual assault and harassment has been raised substantially, but that there's still this lack of respect for women in the sort of climate that seems to sort of not be going away, which I thought was quite interesting. She felt or feels that sort of what we should really go for in our one of the ideas that we should explore in our production is the idea that there's sort of this lack of respect for the female characters. I think this would probably be my character that would deal with this sort of idea. I think because Hara's character is more worked out, really. We've sort of decided that her character is going to be a victim of rape, whereas we think that my character, it's going to be more about sexual harassment, and sort of perhaps, I guess what you could say about my character is that she feels very much that she has no the respect. There was no respect from her attacker for her, and this is something that I'm really going to explore, and sort of the idea that after someone has experienced a sexual offence, that they feel as if no one has any respect for them, or sort of even the respect for themselves has now gone because of this event that wasn't their fault. So this is something that I'm going to explore, the idea of respect. So that was an idea I hadn't really thought of as a writer, but it's something that I'm excited to look into. The next thing we talked about the idea that the play was going to revolve around sexual assault happening during the university experience. Tess said this was a really interesting thing that we were going to be talking about because it's not spoken about as commonly, but it does happen during university, unfortunately. She felt that this was a really interesting sort of way to look at it and to really narrow down this really big concept of sexual assault and sort of bring it down to a smaller level that me and Hara can sort of effectively speak about, and that I can effectively write about in our production. She talked about the fact that there's sort of the drinking culture of university, and it seems to be that in some settings, some behaviour, when someone has had a lot of alcohol, some behaviour is considered inappropriate and some behaviour is considered not inappropriate because of the drinking. I thought that was a really interesting thing I hadn't even thought about, is the fact that in one environment somebody's behaviour could be considered completely inappropriate, and yet in another environment where there's alcohol involved, this behaviour that would have been considered inappropriate is considered not appropriate, but is looked upon in a more lenient way because of alcohol being there. And this is something that I hadn't really thought about, even just as a student. And this was something, it's quite shocking really, the fact that sort of you can be in one environment and behave in a certain way, and people maybe think, oh, I've had a few drinks, whereas you could be in another environment and someone could behave in a way and it would be totally inappropriate. And it was just interesting how the different settings that Tess was talking about seem to affect how people view certain types of behaviour. This is something that I hadn't really thought about as a writer, and this is something that I'm thinking I'm going to explore also with my character. If she's in different settings and if there's alcohol involved in these settings, what kind of behaviour towards her is considered appropriate and what behaviour is considered inappropriate. So this was something, this is another concept, another idea that I'm kind of, I'm looking forward to sort of getting to look into and to explore more with my character. We then went on to talk about really the idea that when you go to university, everyone is vulnerable when they start university, because quite a few people are moving to a new place, it's their first time living on their own, and sort of the idea that, you know, it is quite a vulnerable position to be in. And unfortunately, if a sexual offence happens to you when you're in this sort of vulnerable space mentally, then it can really affect you. And this was something that Tess really wanted me to sort of think about as a writer, especially, was to think about the idea that sexual assault obviously doesn't just affect you mentally and emotionally and physically, but it also affects you socially. So, you know, your whole social circle and life can be affected by a sexual offence. And ultimately, half of the university experience is kind of about the social aspect as well as the studying. So this is something that, again, I hadn't even thought about, but this is why we spoke to Tess, because Tess has, I think, a different viewpoint of sexual assault because she's worked with people, and she's worked with people who've experienced it, and it's her job to kind of know all of this information that we wouldn't have even thought of. So it was really useful to talk to her for that reason. And then finally, she went on to say that we should contact the It Happens Here Society at Newcastle University. Now, Northumberland University did have an It Happens Here Society that that sort of wanted to. The aim of this society was to raise awareness of sexual assault at university and to sort of highlight the services available at Northumberland University to help victims. But unfortunately, the students that ran this society have now graduated, and this means that the society is not really active. So Tess has suggested that we go to or try and sort of meet up with some of the committee members from the It Happens Here Society at Newcastle, at Newcastle University, that seeks to raise awareness of sexual assault within the university, as well as sort of highlighting the services that Newcastle University has to support victims. This is something that we hope to do in a couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll get to meet them and sort of get their viewpoint on the subject. Ultimately, it was very nice to talk to Tess and really sort of feel as if we had a support for the production from someone who has this kind of knowledge and has this kind of professional background in working with the subject matter that we're working with. I just feel like I've gained a lot as a writer from this meeting. There's definitely different perspectives that I hadn't thought of including in the production that have been brought to my attention by Tess. So this is a really great sort of starting for me as a writer. There's loads of different viewpoints I can take inspiration from later in the process as I write the production, and also as I start to create the characters as well. So yeah, it was a really great meeting. It was really useful. And hopefully we will be meeting with Tess again at another time. She wants to come to the production. She wants to come and watch it, which is very good. We're excited to have her there so she can see she's at the first stages right now, and then she'll finally see the ending stage, the final product, which will be great. So yeah, I think I'm quite excited to go about the project now that we have the support of Tess Hudson, and hopefully we will have the support of the It Happens Here Society at Newcastle, and hopefully we can sort of connect sort of the two universities in a certain way, in a way that maybe they haven't before. So yeah, I'm really excited about where we are right now. I'll be back again to talk about any further developments in the creation of the project.